Hello, hello. How we doing, guys? Wow, don't sound too excited. Come on now. Hey, can we just give it up for Chelsea and Chris? Come on, give a big hand for them. Yeah, this thing definitely would not be possible without them, and we are so happy to be here today with some amazing people. So, yeah, guys, we will be chatting about what does the future of AI and investment look like today. So, we have obviously Perna and Guhan here. Do you guys want to kind of just give a little bit intro about yourself, maybe?
Sure. Hey guys, Prerna here. I'm one of the partners in Antler, based in Austin. It's a pre-seed VC, so we invest in founders at the very, very early stage. Yeah, thank you.
How's it going? My name is Guhan Vengaswamy. I currently run platform engineering and AI at Jasper AI. So Jasper is a generative AI product, a co-pilot for marketers, specifically built to make the marketer's entire lifecycle easier to build and generate new content. We've been around for a couple years now, predate ChatGPT, so we've seen the whole lifecycle of generative AI as fast as it's been growing in the last 2 years. So it's been a fun ride and kind of excited to see what's coming up in the next couple of years too.
This guy. Love it. Awesome. And my name is George. So I'm the founder of Thunderstrike AI. So we do essentially taking all of the data from your sales pipeline, figuring out what deals closed in the past, and then automatically generating lead lists based on what works so you can close deals faster and at a way higher rate of success. So, all right, well, let's get into it here, guys. Perna, Guhan, obviously you guys are some of the experts here. So wondering, can you guys kind of elaborate on what does the democratization of funding kind of look like within building generative AI right now? There's a lot of hype, there's a lot of craziness going on. So what does that kind of look like in the current state?
Yeah, I mean, generative AI in general is going to change massively how companies are built. Like that's the fundamental piece to think about here. The accessibility to technology, the way you build it, at the speed that you can build it is going to fundamentally change. We can already see that happening at a pretty massive pace, but the future, which is not even too far away, like 5 years from now, is going to look 10x more than what it looks now. So what that really means is you don't need to be deeply technical to spin off a company anymore, right? Like we've gone through the era of no code, low code as well, where you could get a company off the ground without having, a CS from Harvard or MIT. But now the world is further changing to the point where there's a technology that can spin off basic algorithms for you to start off and create a company, create value for customers. And the next level of deeply technical products or your tech stacks can be built on top of that. So that's huge. And the way it really changes the whole narrative is it'll allow more entrepreneurs to get out and build. And that is the whole, democratization of not just building, but also being able to then get in front of, capital and raise capital faster, deploy capital faster. And the one thing that probably we haven't talked a lot about is AI is also going to change how the capital is deployed, right? And so what that means is there will be tools in future that are going to be tailored for the venture capitalists or for consumers like yourself who are interested in technologies. You want to get in front of them. The only way right now is sure through crowdfunding and platforms that haven't been become mainstream. But my belief and my bet is that the future of VC is going to change quite drastically because of this. And that's yet to be seen. But that allows more people to come into the game and innovate.
I have a follow-up question, but before that, okay, everybody in here, we're gonna do some a little bit interactive here, so perk up a little bit. Who in here wants to start their own business, has their own business, or would love to have a startup? Raise your hand. Okay, can I get a little shout? Woo! Come on, guys, give a little shout. There it is. So, follow-up question. Okay, what do you think the future is maybe for people that are trying to bootstrap a startup? Do you think we'll see a lot more people just rapidly developing and maybe not taking on funding? What does that look like?
Yeah, so what that means is the initial funding that every entrepreneur would uses for is talent, right? Like you're looking for initial engineers to pull the product off the ground. You're looking for getting your sales pipeline up and ready. These are the two most important things at the early stage. And yes, that can fundamentally change if you have something which allows you to get to your first 100 customers without needing capital, right? So yes, there is a world that could change, but it depends from startup to startup. I wouldn't generalize it because there will be still companies which are highly deep tech that would require that capital, going in. But what that means is that not every entrepreneur needs to have capital to be able to start a company, right? You can bootstrap it to the first 100 customers and then get into the game for sure.
Awesome. Okay, I actually have a question for both of you. This is totally off the cuff, so we're going to do it. If you guys were going to start a startup within the AI space right now, what problem would you solve? What would you guys be doing?
Oh boy, there's so many right now. It's a big one. I think something in marketing right now has just got a lot of meat on the bone. I think still. Maybe I'm just biased having been working in the marketing space the last 2 years. But the other thing I think is around RevOps and sales ops. There's still a lot there. There's some big incumbents that are always going to be the players like Salesforce. But if you look around that area, there's a lot that can be done. Streamlining pipelines as agents start to become a little more developed. We're going to be able to see things like this is me coming from a technical background, but alongside founding a company and saying, hey, maybe I don't need to bring on a technical co-founder too early. From the technical side, maybe I'm willing to do a little bit more of the engineering work, but don't want to bring on a more business-oriented co-founder too early. And I think with agents developing that side of the partnership, you're going to have a lot more people who are deep engineers that are going to be able to start companies a little faster, a little quicker. So they might be able to solve problems that are more developer tool oriented as well. And they'll be able to solve those problems faster and deliver them to their customers, the engineers, much quicker than they were previously.
Yeah, I don't know about me personally building a startup in AI, but the spaces that I am particularly interested in are infrastructure and tooling that will enable more applications to come out on AI. I think that piece is yet to be developed. So we are at probably the first innings, right, of generative AI. So a lot of work is being done at the models and the foundational models, and that's going great, and I still think it's very, very early. However, there's a gap between the end use of it and what exists in terms of models. And somebody who's like solving that piece, which is tools, infrastructure, making it more accessible to founders to plug and play, right? I think that's very interesting to me to dive into and invest and help founders who are building in that space.
The other piece is privacy and security is still a wide open field right now. Large language models right now are tending to skew onto the sides of, you see with Anthropic specifically is they're really erring on the side of caution where all of their outputs are, you get slightly on the side of saying, hey, give me like a anxiety-filled story about this, and maybe it says like, hey, let's reword this prompt so you can actually get something good out of it. They're really erring on the side of privacy right now, but that needs to be kind of relaxed, and we need to put good security controls in place to allow people to legitimately get good content out of these large language models. There's just a ton right there to start building out as well.
So we were kind of talking about this a little bit beforehand, right? But there was like a ton of hype around investment in kind of 2020, 2021, 2022 in just AI in general, right? So where do you guys think we're going to be at in the next 5 years, investment-wise, also startup-wise, right? Are we going to see people completely rebuilding startups, targeting enterprise spaces, and cutting the price in half because they could build it in a year? Are we going to see evaluations go down? Is there a bubble? Is it going to pop? What do you guys think?
I definitely don't think it's a bubble or the hype, the way we call hype cycles to be. It is a new technology that is going to bring a huge, huge change in how we experience tech, but also like build tech or invest and stuff like that. So I don't believe it's a hype. But what we should be careful of is doesn't become a trend for investments, right? Like you see AI and that's all it matters about. So you need to see the end use of it. And we were discussing like backstage, like a lot of things don't really need AI. So why use AI, right? So if there are founders in the room, if you're building, remember that a consumer is not consuming AI. They are consuming a product for their value that they actually get. They don't care how it is built, what's behind the scene. They care what they're using it for. And that is what is most important. So the next generation or the next 5 years is, one, the foundational models have to improve and they have to become more robust, and a lot of work needs to be done there. Second is investors need to educate themselves and be extremely diligent in how they're investing in the next 5 years of AI companies, because a lot of that may not survive. And we've already seen one cycle of it where, verticalized AI happened, and then all of a sudden everything changes when OpenAI creates verticalized models. So things like that, like I think we are going to see pretty massive changes in the technology itself in the next 5 years, and founders and investors need to be on top of it, like what's happening and what's coming, to be able to make the right decisions.
Yeah, and I'll even say from a founder perspective, right? I think the largest thing that helped us scale really efficiently within a few months is we used virtual assistants along with AI, right? There's some things that AI can't do with a personal touch. So we used this agency called Coconut VA, and they give premium benefits and everything like that. But it allowed me, one, to essentially scale the startup with half the price and a fraction of the price of having people on payroll, as well as then training them to use AI in their daily tasks. Because I think what you're kind of saying, right? Even in the pace of development of where we're at, there still needs to be a little bit of touch that a co-pilot cannot do.
Oh, 100%. I think we are way far from it becoming magical. I'm not saying it's not going to be possible. There is a clear pathway to it, but it's not there yet. And so that human in the loop is required, and it's important. So you make sure that the outcomes that you're providing to your consumers are really accurate and they're not hallucinated or inaccurate, right? Misinformation or privacy. Like these are all things that we need to think about from enterprise perspective. It's not going to happen overnight as startups can, which is why startups are agile and the beauty of startups. But the good news is that it's not those kind of technologies that cannot be integrated or implemented quickly enough in enterprise world. So I don't think they're far away from having products that will integrate generative AI or the new technologies that will come out in the next 5 years.
Yeah, the other limiting factor with enterprise technology is also education for the enterprise, right? We, at Jasper, we talk about it a lot right now as we build an enterprise-grade solution. Half the time we're doing education with these companies and teaching them, hey, what is security of a large language model? What are the things you can actually do with this and feel comfortable about? And so, as startups start to get focused on the enterprise-grade technology, security and privacy is ending up right now being the biggest thing that enterprises care about. But as education starts meeting up with, the landscape as it is right now, they're going to start getting more involved in, okay, how does this actually work? What are the big problems that you're solving for them? And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier is, AI is a huge hammer and there's a lot of little nails for us to go and hit with it, but it's not always the right choice. You don't need this massive club to go and take down some very targeted, very easy to hit nails.
Yeah, okay, so along that line, right, if the future, what we're kind of seeing is a lot of these large players like, a Google, they're trying to get Bard out, they're trying to, Bing or any of these guys are kind of going out and putting a layer of AI in most of their stuff. Do you think that, every FANG, right, the Amazons, the Apples of the world, what do you think their play is going to be in the next couple of years to kind of innovate in the space, if anything at all? Do you think they're just kind of waiting it out?
No, I mean, they're all talking about it. Like we've seen from, their earnings calls and what they're discussing in the boardrooms is quite a lot of generative AI and how their company is going to shape and evolve in the future, which is a positive sign because historically we haven't seen these big enterprises taking innovation so seriously and also making huge steps towards that. So, which is why I said this technology is so malleable and so easy to incorporate that all the big enterprises are thinking about it, and some of them are already making headway into their products and things like that. But again, the future of what it's going to be and what it is today is very, very different. So this is the first step towards it. And the good news is everybody's thinking and understanding how to best utilize the technology for their users.
It's also reshaping their whole business too, right? They're not just the products that they're putting out for customer-facing features, but you see all these large FAANG companies actually consolidating and utilizing AI in areas of their business to try and make sure that they're actually operating efficiently and able to compete in the market. So AI is just going to be everywhere. I think we're already kind of seeing that right now. But the next phase of AI, where we're going to see additional consolidation and maybe some of these agents that can start performing actions for us and we can send out to go and do jobs, I think that's where we're going to see some really interesting changes.
It's almost like the mobile technology that came out, right? It was it's so weird to think about that there was a panel that was happening and somebody asked, do you think Amazon will have an app? And right? That's where we are at. It is inevitable that every enterprise has to move in that direction for the future of technology. And now, we are part of that movement now, which is great.
So do you think that for kind of early stage startups, is there a way that they could pivot pretty quickly or learn to solve a new problem with the use of AI?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, being agile and nimble as an early stage startup right now is probably the most important thing you can have, especially if you're working in the generative AI space. The landscape is shifting so rapidly that you saw, for example, when OpenAI put out the GPTs, it completely wiped out a bunch of people's initial plays on what they were doing with their startup. Now, the founders who were smart and had good foresight were able to pivot and continue to move towards solving the problem, but it did cause problems for a lot of founders. So I think definitely at an early stage startup, if you're not trying to stay ahead of the trends and continuing to adapt and be flexible, you're going to have a hard time competing. And the last thing is you have to have a problem that you're actually solving. So at the end of the day, if you're just trying to do AI for AI's sake, you're kind of not going anywhere.
I was even telling these guys backstage, I've had a ton of my buddies in Y Combinator even recently that have been in the last batch, current batch before that. They are all pivoting massively right now because they were kind of within somewhat of the funding hype cycle within AI, and it was a kind of a scarce commodity for wanting to invest in a YC startup. So now they're really trying to figure out, okay, what does this look like to solve a true problem? So. Sweet. Well, another question for y'all. What do you have for advice for maybe some early employees coming into a new startup, an AI startup? How can they kind of innovate really quickly and make their life easier and or help the startup grow really fast?
I'd probably boil it down to just learning. I think education and learning is the number one thing that I would focus on. Just trying to stay on top of everything that's happening. In the last year, we've seen the RAG systems completely change and evolve into what they are right now. And now, in another 6 months, we'll be thinking RAG is a commoditized piece that's already done, and we're moving on to the next thing. So if we're with the pace that things are moving, I think education and learning is the number one thing. So if you're not setting aside time for that, it's really hard to stay on top. I think the other thing, even if you're in a non-technical role, AI literacy is now going to be table stakes for getting a job anywhere. I think it's going to change a lot of startups, the way they hire, even for marketing and sales roles, that they're going to be looking for people who have a good amount of AI literacy and are able to actually use the tools to their advantage to make really good optimization. So that's the number one thing.
Where should I move if I'm a founder? Should I like city-wise, state-wise, is there a really good place you think to be building in AI? Wow.
Austin.
Valid.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is what we're talking about, right? Like AI or generative AI is creating accessibility towards technology. You don't need to be in a city to build anymore. We will, access to people, access to investors, access to early talent, all of that has become way, way more easier. So I would say it doesn't matter in the early stage. Build a great product, create value for the customers, generate revenue. It doesn't matter what your underlying technology is. Great if it's generative AI, if it's actually solving a problem for the customer, but just remain focused on that. The investments in the next few years, the good investors will be looking at moats, right? Differentiation in the products. It's become very hard to differentiate your product because technology has become so accessible. Gone are the days when you could say, my algorithm is the best in the world and that's my defensibility. So what is your defensibility? Something to think more deeply about. What are you building on top of these models? And for that, you don't need to be in a specific geography. Wherever you are, get the product up and running and create value.
And I will say, too, kind of piggybacking off of that, building a core technology right now is very important if you are a founder or trying to start a startup, because especially within the investment landscape, I personally have pitched to probably over 100 investors in the past few months, and everybody is looking for not just a layer on top of a layer of, sure, it can definitely solve a problem, but how is it going to innovate in the space overall and at scale for large economies, for that to really impact them. So, yeah. Well, any closing thoughts here, guys?
I mean, I can talk a little bit about the investment landscape and what we're going to see in the coming years as you start working on startups that is utilizing generative AI. Just remember that the core principles remain the same, which is if you're a B2B SaaS, you should be generating revenue, and the technology should be helping your revenues go 100x from where you are. If that is happening, then you need that technology. If it's just a technology and it's not creating value, it's not worth it. Second thing would be, let's say in consumers, if you're able to create high engagement, create transactions on the platform and create that, user growth, then, there's a use case for generative AI. So that's something that investors would deeply zone into. They're also educating themselves in terms of what is generative AI. It's very early. Not everybody has their heads around that. So it's important that you are well educated. Why you need this technology? How are you building it? What's the tech stack? So yeah, that's just a piece of advice to any founders in the room who are building in this technology.
Yeah, I think one thing that I think about a lot is design in the AI space and the user experience. More so than anything right now, I think for a user's perspective, there's an idea of perceived quality versus actual quality when it comes to these large language models and generative AI. And perceived quality is a lot of the times just made better by great design and UX. And so you can kind of really work hard on building a product that's very usable, that has, some small pieces of generative AI that solve a problem, and you'll get way further than trying to way over-index on a specific generative technology that may be usurped by a new generative technology in another 3 days, by actually providing a great user experience for your customers. So. AI-driven design, I think, is really the next phase of where we're going to, because it'll also give great feedback for what is the next AI piece I actually need to develop next.
Could not agree more. Well, guys, that wraps up this panel. So thank you guys so much for listening, and can we give it up for these amazing people right here?
And our host, George.
Thank you. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you again.